voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Mr. Sheriff, have you seen Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle?
Excuse me?
Have you seen the movie Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle?
No, I've not, Congresswoman.
So there's a famous scene in that movie where Neil Patrick Harris borrows the car and completely trashes it. And Wells Fargo lends money to consumers to buy cars, and Wells Fargo wants the consumers to take good care of the car. That's the collateral. Protect that value. But there's always this Neil Patrick Harris risk. Someone trashes the car, defaults on the loan, and the value's not enough, and there's a risk of a loss. To guard against that loss, Wells Fargo has consumers pay for GAP waivers. GAP stands for Guaranteed Auto Protection, and the GAP waiver cancels the remaining balance on the loan if the regular auto liability payout after the car is damaged is insufficient. But when someone pays off the loan, there is no need for that GAP waiver. There's no need for debt cancellation because the debt is paid off. But you, Wells Fargo, keep charging for that GAP waiver. You didn't tell consumers after they paid off the loan early that you owed them money back, about $350 each. Effectively, the bank stole this money from 1.7 million consumers nationwide, leaving Wells Fargo sitting on over $600 million in ill-gotten gains. How much of that $600 million that Wells Fargo owes consumers in GAP overcharges has been returned?
Congresswoman, I don't know the exact number sitting here of what we've returned.
Okay. The chart on the side, this is how much you owe, $600 million. This is how much you've returned, 0. You told me in my office that Wells Fargo in the past has been penny wise but pound foolish. And I agreed, resisting doing what's right and paying consumers. And I really saw that when I was the monitor for the state of California during foreclosure crisis. So if you're here today to tell us that Wells Fargo has changed its ways, you should have no problem committing to giving these people their own money back in terms of GAP overcharges. Will you commit to give them their money back?
Congresswoman, there's no question if we have harmed customers, then we should in fact do that, and we'll go back and take a look at the specific example and understand why it hasn't been done and how we can move quickly to rectify it.
This is the pleading in that case that's pending, in which Wells Fargo is currently arguing that even though it charged people for many years of GAP insurance and the consumer paid off the loan early, they have not in fact refunded that GAP insurance. And that $350 means a lot. It's 18 bags of groceries for families. So I would love for you to commit to doing that. I also wanted to ask you, have you heard of the song, Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys?
I don't believe I have.
It's written by an American hero, Willie Nelson. I have 3 kids, Mr. Scharf, and I'm thinking of writing a new song, Mama Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Bank Tellers. Mr. Scharf, how many of your tellers are currently receiving public assistance in this country?
I'm not aware, Congresswoman.
Right now, 1/3 of bank tellers in the United States receive public assistance. Madam Chair, I'd like permission to enter into the record the study from the University of California, Berkeley, that shows that the cost of public benefits to families of bank tellers is almost $900 million per year.
Without objection, such is the order.
So taxpayers are subsidizing Wells Fargo's wages to the tune of $900 million per year. I don't want my kids to grow up and be Wells Fargo tellers because statistically speaking, one of the three would end up needing public assistance. Is Wells Fargo profitable? Is Wells Fargo profitable?
I believe it is, yes, Congresswoman.
You believe? I mean, it's $19.5 billion last year, so we can round that up to $20 billion. That's profit. So the bank can afford to pay its tellers significantly more. Do you think the hardworking taxpayers of this country should be shoring up Wells Fargo's tellers' salaries when the bank has profits of $20 billion a year and paid out $30 billion in buybacks and dividends last year?
Congresswoman, I believe we should pay people fairly, and I believe the actions that we've taken, especially recently by raising the minimum wage, does in fact do that. We also, in addition to...
You raised the wage only in high-cost areas, however, not across the board. You raised the wage only in high-cost areas, not across the board.
We raised our wages in 4 different tiers.
With that, I yield back.
It is Thursday, the 12th of March of 2020. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Speaking of spice, don't you think that when Trump reads a teleprompter, they should at least have a whoopee cushion underneath him to liven the thing up? Boy, that guy is so dour when he reads a teleprompter. Pretty good when he's riffing as Mussolini at his Nuremberg rallies, I gotta say. Quite a difference in delivery. Maybe because when you got Jared and Santa Monica Goebbels, Stephen Miller writing the speech. Yeah, the foreign virus. The Chinese virus. Yeah, let's just put out the, they're not even dog whistles. It's a bullhorn. The racist bullhorn plays to the base. They had to go back. I mean, the guy's reading off a teleprompter, okay? It's not like he made a mistake. Well, yeah, he made a mistake. But regardless, I'm just being rhetorical here. He's reading off a teleprompter. And then they had to backtrack and go, oh, wow, well, actually Ireland is not on that list because we have golf courses there. I bet if you check all the countries that have an exemption, there's a golf course that Trump has an interest in. I bet that's what it is. In fact, we know. And once again, Scotland is going hard on Trump for that golf course that he ran through there. In fact, there's a whole movie about it. You should see it. People have seen that movie. Well, actually, what I'm afraid of is that people actually did see that movie, and the base part of his support really liked what he did to all those people, those homeowners that had been there having family properties for hundreds and hundreds of years. It didn't matter. Trump wanted what he wanted, and he got what he wanted. And then he whined because he didn't want to have any windmill out on the ocean to catch, windmill power. Oh, no, those are ugly. I used to hear that when we first started this powerhouse of resistance called Netroots Radio. There were some Eastern Seaboard members who were upset that, there might be some ugly windmills out there. What do they call it? Big wind. Big wind. Give me a break. Whining about, it's ugly. And why do we have to have it? And as their defense on why they shouldn't have it, the charge was made, well, you're on the West Coast. How would you like it if you had a windmill up your coastline? And I had to remind folks with pictures of what the California coastline used to look like and looks like today, with all those oil derricks dotted all up and down the beach and out there in the ocean for everyone to see. Got so bad that at least down in the Long Beach area, they would make the oil derricks into a fake island or two. Just give it a little bit of an aesthetic appeal. So when, the rich old people that I would become one day could look out from their high-rise there at the Long Beach Harbor and see, well, just some sort of man-made island out there instead of an ugly oil derrick. All right. So, big win, right. Well, Trump didn't like it because, I don't know, he thought that it killed birds out there in the ocean, maybe. There are seabirds. Maybe they could get caught up in the vortex of the big old prop. Okay. His brother was a physicist at MIT. So somehow by osmosis, Trump has been imbued with all science. He works from his gut. And I got to tell you, his gut is churning up a lot of bad stuff. Ooh, it stinks too. Well, that's not all we have to contend with. We also have a pandemic. I had a very disturbing experience yesterday. A longtime friend was, I don't know, was it rightfully? I don't know. I was being taken to task for reporting on, I guess, a clickbait headline. And I was trying to think. Headlines, by their very definition, are clickbait. Otherwise, they wouldn't be headlines. You wouldn't even have a headline. You just go right into the body of the story. Of course, a headline is clickbait. What else do you think it would be? But it was where the repug members of Congress and the Senate were briefed by a CDC official about how, well, most everyone could get the coronavirus. Most everyone meaning, 10 to 120, 220 million, somewhere around there, that range. So, I guess if you wanted to parse it, 220 million isn't most everyone. I'll concede that. But it's a lot of people. When I hear percentages of it'll only be 28% of the population. Well, you know what 28% of the population is? Millions and millions of people. That's no small number. So for some reason, I was taken to task for, I don't know, embellishing or misinformation. That's what it was. And I was a bit confused in the beginning because I got to tell you, the rhetoric that was used sounded very familiar with how I had just been engaged by a bunch of Trump people. So at first I was confused. I thought, did these Trump people hack my friend's account? Because this doesn't sound like him. And then I was hammered for not showing proper fealty to Bernie. And that was because I had made mention that, Biden is nicer than Trump. I just thought that was a given. I mean, everybody's nicer than Trump, and Biden happens to be running and he's nicer than Trump. I mean, there's no, look, I know I didn't get Bernie up there too. I'm sorry. And I kind of thought that the argument was that I said Biden was nicer than Trump, but Bernie is meaner than Trump, and that's what we want. Well, maybe we do. But I would also argue that even Bernie is nicer than Trump. I'm sorry I didn't mention it, okay? But boy, friendship ended, and, I'm an old boomer, and, just everything. So that's okay. There's a tit for tat, and we're friends, but still, it was a bit disturbing because why is this trigger? What is this trigger about Biden now? It sounds so familiar back in the day when I had to contend with friends in Orange County who, at the mere mention of Hillary Clinton, would go into a tirade. The mere mention. You say Hillary, and you couldn't even get Hillary out of your mouth, and they were going off about how she's an evil witch back in the 90s, when she was just the first lady. And I thought back then, wow, man, the propaganda and brainwashing is strong in some people. They really take to it. And then after decade and decade and decade of hearing the same effing thing over and over and over, and it was patently untrue. Oh, I know, everybody's going to now say, well, Hillary is one of the most corrupt people in the world. No, one of the most corrupt people in the world was Garfield. Give me a break. Jeez. Teapot Dome. My God. Please, please, please. Can we have some sense of history here? Can we step back and see who they attack? What that means? We have moved somehow into this terrible realm that if they damage our side too much, well, we can't put that candidate up. They're damaged. They've been lied about. They've been tainted with all those lies about them. Well, yeah, they're lies. Why would we say that candidate who had been attacked so vociferously by the other side, for some reason, I'm pissed off at Biden about Anita Hill. I hated that. I sat there and said, just typical weak-kneed liberal BS on race once again. I mean, Clarence Thomas saying it was a high-tech lynching. As soon as some of those weak-kneed liberals on the panel heard lynching, oh no, they're saying we're lynching. How about you're protecting a woman from sexual harassment, regardless of the nominee's color? Huh? Well, they couldn't do that because, you got to pander. And Joe was pandering then. I hated it. But let's look at what was happening at the same time with Trump. All right? Something a little bit more untoward, shall we say. Kicking old black people out of his high rises because, he could. He couldn't, but he was doing it anyway. And he's going to get sued about it. So, yeah, that was bad. All right, what Joe did. I agree. But there's a lot. There's a lot to be said about whether a Bernie coalition can work, and it could. There's a lot of work to do. And I think endorsements go a long way. I was taken to task about Clyburn. I said, the Clyburn endorsement is pretty powerful. And, then I just it was so confusing. I'm going on about this, and I know I should put a stop to it. But I thought we were fighting on the same side here. All right. I got it. I just have to make it clear. It's still up in the air. I don't know why it is from the very beginning. The only candidate that I actually expressed anything approaching, my endorsement is that I like Kamala. I keep saying I want my Kamala back. Okay, that's really the candidate that I really like. But of course, she's a cop. Well, I want a cop. Please, can we? We got a mobster in the office right now. I think we need a cop to root it out. Please. So that candidate is the only one I've expressed anything close to an endorsement. I've said some nice things about Biden, and I get hammered about, well, Biden's not nice. Not really. I know that. I guess so. But a lot of people think he's nice, and he got a lot of endorsements, but it's still up in the air. Whoever is the Democratic candidate is who I am voting for, and I don't know why that is considered wrong. Oh, you have to go big. Okay, well, what does that mean? I mean, there's a lot of people who are going big with, let's say, Ralph Nader. A lot of people were going big that way. How'd that work out? And that's not the only example of people wanting to go big. All right. I'm still a pragmatist. I should remind folks, my first actual conscious volunteering for a political campaign before I could even vote. I had been part of political campaigns because of my dad. But the first one that I joined on my own was Shirley Chisholm's. And when it was clear, and she said it was clear, we backed McGovern. My God, I backed a caucus. If somebody's going to back Dukakis, you can damn well back whoever is the candidate. It might be Bernie and it might be Biden, but I'm backing the Democratic candidate. All right? That's how I'm going big. Excuse me for being some sort of corporate dem, whatever that means. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? As we've just eaten into all this time. Well, at the top, of course, that was Oh, Representative Katie Porter from Orange County, the beach community down there, she grilled Wells Fargo CEO Charlie Wells on whether he'd seen Harold and Kumar go to White Castle, and he has not. And also, by the way, to refund the money Wells Fargo overcharged consumers on auto loans. On the rest of the menu, global stocks plummeted after Trump banned travel from Europe in an inefficient effort to contain COVID-19. Very inefficient. A cancer research scientist is able to link 2 U.S. state COVID outbreaks with genetic fingerprints. And in a very unusual move, Trump has ordered federal health officials to treat top-level coronavirus meetings as classified, top secret. What they don't know, they won't get. Don't test, don't tell. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where Brazil's Congress overturned a presidential veto in an ongoing battle over appropriations, and the UN Court for the former Yugoslavia has delayed the appeals hearing of convicted war criminal and general Ratko Mladic on health grounds. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Want to reiterate now, whoever is the Democratic candidate in the general is who I am voting for. All right. And here in Oregon, we don't even have our primary yet. And if people keep hammering me, I got to tell you, people are saying I'm throwing away my vote with Biden, or I'm throwing away my vote for Bernie. Well, I'm not throwing away my vote, but if I'm going to be throwing away my vote, I'm writing in Kamala, and then I am going to vote for whomever is the Democratic candidate in the general, and I implore you to do the same. If you're going to go big, back whomever that candidate is. All right? It's very simple. All right. That said, if you go to the bottom of our upgraded and new secure homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice to the rightish at the bottom of the page our chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Go to the leftish of the page at the bottom of our homepage at our new and upgraded secure homepage at netrootsradio.com. You will then notice our link to our Patreon page, very secure now. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your recurring contribution, say, how about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink sent to us once a month, not only helps us fulfill our civic duties as the founders originally intended all those many, well, almost an eon ago. You're helping us do that, but also we get to pay our bills, and we get to put money aside and buy newish machinery, which we are doing a little piecemeal right now. But thank you so much for your generosity over all these many years. Did you know we celebrated our 9th anniversary yesterday? 24/7, 365. We're a powerhouse of resistance, and we do it around the clock every day in all these years. How do we do it? Well, nevertheless, we persisted after all the odds and obstacles thrown up in our way. But your generosity over all these many years has helped us fulfill, really, our civic duty. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of @JusticePutnam. I'm single, you know. And I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. and then get that out on social media for your linkage pleasure. And ostensibly, I might be able to get an actual link of it on Facebook today. We'll have to see when I take a break here and see if it's available and been opened up yet, or have I been suspended again, which I suspect will happen because of all the terrible things I said about Trump and all those many different comments. Don't do that, especially in a private, uncensored group that only has about 1,200 people. I mean, I got suspended over all of Facebook for a tiny little group in a tiny little burg of Ashland. And how that happens, one can only suspect. Yeah, one can only suspect. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And then you, of course, can get podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. All right, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, by the way. Another reminder, do not diss the grits. I know a lot of people don't like the grits, all right? And one other, I don't know, shall we say, one small little peek. No stock, no water in the grits. You gotta use milk, please. This first offering comes out of Reuters by Ritvik Carvalho. Global stocks plunged into a bear market, and oil slumped after President, yeah, that guy. We don't say the P word very often here, but I think it's appropriate now because the blame will be on him. Donald Trump banned travel from Europe to stem the spread of coronavirus, threatening more disruption to the world economy. Almost as like Vlad planned it. Weird, huh? With the pandemic wreaking havoc on the daily life of millions, investors were also disappointed by the lack of broad measures in Trump's plan to fight the virus, prompting traders to bet on further aggressive easing by the U.S. Federal Reserve. Trump did not announce any new concrete measures, such as a large-scale payroll tax cut to buffer the economy against the impending coronavirus slowdown, said Jeffrey Halley, senior market analyst at OANDA. Owanda? Huh. That has probably disappointed markets more than anything. Well, he's raiding the Social Security fund by giving this supposed payroll tax cut. What is a payroll tax cut? Yeah, the money that you put into your investment fund called Social Security. Yeah, that money. Yeah. You think you're getting a tax cut? No, you're taking money from your retirement fund. Please. Let's see, the index was down over 2% on the day. Investors also rushed into safe haven assets from bonds that get you hardly any kind of return over 1 million years, but at least it's safe, supposedly. Oh, and everybody's going to gold, to the yen, and the Swiss franc. Bitcoin plunged 25%. U.S. S&P 500 futures ESC1 plummeted as much as 5% in European trading a day after the S&P 500 lost almost 5%. Yes, Japan's Nikkei crumbled 4.4% to a trough last seen almost 3 years ago. Australian shares plunged almost 7.5% to their lowest level in more than 3 years. And Trump announced the U.S. will suspend all travel from Europe except the United Kingdom and Ireland to the U.S. for 30 days starting on Friday. He said trade will not be affected by the restrictions because he doesn't know what he's doing. He just said, oh, well, you know, if you're in Europe, you got to come to the UK and Ireland first. And if you go to Turnberry, you don't even have to wash your hands. Carla K. Johnson of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A U.S. scientist is helping public health authorities understand and track the coronavirus, turning up clues about how it arrived and spread through Washington state and beyond, including potentially seeding an outbreak on the Grand Princess cruise ship. Washington's governor banned large public events in 3 counties yesterday, Wednesday, a strategy guided by the work of Trevor Bedford and his colleagues, who have estimated there are currently 1,100 active cases in the state, most of them undiscovered by testing. Like a detective studying fingerprints, Bedford uses the genetic code the virus leaves behind. The dots he connects are mutations in the genetic alphabet of the virus, a 30,000-letter string that changes at the rate of 1 letter every 15 days. Those tiny mutations don't change the virus's effect on people, but they do allow scientists to draw conclusions about how it spreads from person to person. After a person gets tested for the virus with nasal and throat swabs, a small bit of the specimen can be used to rapidly sequence the virus's genome. That work has been happening not just in Seattle, but in other labs around the world. Scientists are sharing their results on a public platform where they've been sharing influenza genome data since 2008. I want to interject. We do have an offering coming up here in the Bistro Cafe about all meetings about coronavirus. Senior staff at the CDC and with the administration will be classified. And is it only a matter of time before this genome sequencing public proclamation will be shut down and determined to be top secret, classified? When you run government like a business, you might just bankrupt it. This week, Bedford's lab at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center worked with California researchers to find links between a cluster of cases in the Seattle area and the outbreak on the Grand Princess cruise ship in California. They're all very similar genetically, Bedford said. It seems very possible that virus from the Washington outbreak made it onto the Grand Princess. Dr. Charles Chu of the University of California, San Francisco agreed. He provided genome sequencing of 7 samples from infected passengers who got off the Grand Princess this week. An 8th sample from an earlier Grand Princess cruise to Mexico had ties to Washington state, Chu said, and that person likely seeded the outbreak among passengers on board as the ship left for Hawaii. The simplest explanation, Chu said, is that the earlier Grand Princess passenger had been in Washington state and then seeded the cruise ship outbreak. But there is an alternative explanation, Chu said. A cruise passenger or a crew member was infected in another country, coincidentally by a virus with the same mutations as the Washington state cases, but common sense tells you it more likely came from Washington. And Marissa Taylor bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The White House has ordered federal health officials to treat top-level coronavirus meetings as classified. an unusual step that has restricted information and hampered the U.S. government's response to the contagion, according to 4 Trump administration officials who are obviously too afraid to let anyone know who they are for fear of what might happen to them and their families. In this reporter's opinion, of course. The official said that dozens of classified discussions about such topics as the scope of infections, quarantines, and travel restrictions have been held since mid-January in a high-security meeting room at the Department of Health and Human Services, a key player in the fight against the coronavirus. Staffers without security clearances, including government experts, were excluded from the interagency meetings, which included video conference calls because they're trying to figure a way to manipulate the market or sell short during a pandemic to make as much money as possible. Because, there is money to be made in a disaster, at least in this reporter's opinion. The sources said the National Security Council, which advises the president on security issues, ordered the classification. This came directly from the White House, one official said. The White House insistence on secrecy at the nation's premier public health organization, which has not been previously disclosed because it was top secret, has put a lid on certain information and potentially delay the response to the crisis. COVID-19, the disease caused by the virus, has killed about 30 people in the U.S. and infected more than 1,000 people. HHS oversees a broad range of health agencies, including the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, while, among other things, is responsible for tracking cases and providing guidance nationally on the outbreaks. But I got to tell you, Trump has to figure out what company is going to make money, and that's where he's going to jump in. Trump has to get his big. Or, as Hitler and Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller have all said, there are a lot of useless mouths out there eating. Wouldn't it be nice if we just got rid of them? All those people over 60? Well, I got to tell you, COVID-19 doesn't care about your geopolitics. COVID-19 doesn't care about your racism. COVID-19 doesn't care about your ignorance and greed. All right? Well, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Annie Sneed. Rice Krispies, rain hitting a tin roof, bacon frying? How about noisy creatures known as snapping shrimp? Warm, temperate, and tropical coastal waters around the world are teeming with these noisy little creatures. They snap their claws so fast that they produce a bubble. When the bubble bursts, it makes a loud popping sound.
It's this sort of persistent background noise, these snapping shrimp kind of crackling.
Aaron Mooney, a marine biologist at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. The shrimp produce the loud sound to stun prey. So how would these shrimp be affected by oceans getting warmer in coming years? To find out, Mooney and his colleague Ashley Lillis analyzed audio recordings of the critters in their natural environment. They also performed lab experiments with snapping shrimp collected from the wild in water of varying temperatures. And they found that when water heats up, the shrimp start snapping more, and the water soundscape gets louder. They shared their findings in February at the Ocean Sciences Meeting 2020 in San Diego. The researchers aren't sure what's causing this change in shrimp behavior, but they have an idea.
We don't precisely know the mechanism of why they're snapping more often. What we think is that these guys are basically just ectothermic animals. So that means that they're directly responding to environmental conditions around them. And so basically, as you increase the water temperature, it increases their metabolic rates, or they get just more metabolically active. And so they're able or trying to snap more.
If these shrimp do make the ocean noisier as the climate warms, it could be a problem for both marine creatures and humans. Many ocean animals use sound to communicate, and both the Navy and fishermen rely on marine acoustics to do their work.
We never really thought about how that ocean or its own background noise or its own fog is sort of naturally increasing, and what we think is, temperature driven or climate change driven. So as you raise those levels, it just gets harder to kind of see through that acoustic fog.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Annie Sneed.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As the days get longer and the weather warms, people of all ages will start to spring into action. Spring is a great time to breathe fresh air, stretch your arms and legs, and get physically active outdoors. Lack of physical activity contributes to obesity, heart disease, stroke, and other chronic health conditions. Fortunately, many communities are making it easier and safer to be physically active. Neighborhoods across the country are working together to create more public spaces for walking, running, biking, and other physical activities. Adults should get at least 150 minutes of physical activity each week, and children should get 60 minutes a day. If you find it hard to walk to a local recreation center, park, or playground, learn how to make your neighborhood a place that makes healthy living easier. Visit makinghealtheasier.org for information about ways communities can change to get more people outside and moving.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1930. That was the day that Mahatma Gandhi began his famous Salt March. The march was to protest British colonial rule of India and the repressive salt tax waged on the Indian people. Under British rule, Indian people were prohibited from producing salt. They were required to purchase expensive British salt that was heavily taxed. Gandhi brought international attention to this injustice with a 240-mile march to the city of Dandi on the coast of the Arabian Sea. Dozens of supporters of the cause began the march with Gandhi. As the march passed through villages, and more joined the trek and gathered to hear Gandhi speak. They reached the sea by April 5th. The next day, the marchers scooped up salt deposits from the shore in defiance of the British salt regulations. For the next 2 months, Gandhi continued to organize salt protests. He planned a march on large salt works, but was arrested before it began. In his absence, some 2,500 protesters picked up and carried out the actions. the marchers were brutally beaten by police. In total, 60,000 people were arrested during the campaign. Gandhi was held for more than 6 months until his release was negotiated. The non-violent civil disobedience of Gandhi and his followers were key to dismantling the British colonial system in India. Their courage also served as an inspiration to the labor movement and civil rights movement in the United States. A. Philip Randolph, the president of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, was one such labor leader inspired by the action. He planned his march on Washington to protest discrimination in hiring during World War II, in part based on the Indian example. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The World Health Organization on Wednesday declared the coronavirus outbreak a global pandemic. The NBA suspended its season indefinitely. The Senate has been compromised. Tom Hanks announced that he and his wife tested positive for the virus. And in a televised address from the Oval Office, Donald Trump dramatically reversed course and finally behaved as if we are in the midst of a global emergency while stopping short of declaring an actual emergency. But he just had to place the blame for the virus on someone other than himself, so Trump began his speech by pointing out that the virus was born in China and then framed it as foreign.
This is the most aggressive and comprehensive effort to confront a foreign virus in modern history.
Then the President of the United States accused the European Union of failing to act to stem its spread before announcing his decision to suspend travel from the EU to the U.S. for 30 days beginning Friday. Oh, and by the way, the UK is exempt.
Taking early, intense action, we have seen dramatically fewer cases of the virus in the United States than are now present in Europe. The European Union failed to take the same precautions and restrict travel from China and other hotspots. As a result, a large number of new clusters in the United States were seeded by travelers from Europe. After consulting with our top government health professionals, I have decided to take several strong but necessary actions to protect the health and well-being of all Americans. To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
The hubris of the man is astounding. By the way, EU leaders are livid, saying that the travel ban was imposed, quote, without consultation. And they pushed back, saying that fighting the virus requires cooperation rather than unilateral action. Trump also announced a proposal for the Small Business Administration to provide low-interest loans to businesses disrupted by the virus. But he offered nothing to prevent the spread domestically, nothing about expanding access to testing kits, nothing about increasing funding to the Centers for Disease Control or providing resources to state health departments or dealing with travel within the U.S., You get the idea. Trump did absolutely nothing to allay fears. If anything, the effect was the opposite. And the hits kept coming throughout the night on Wednesday. Yes, the NBA suspended its season indefinitely after a player with the Utah Jazz tested positive, and the NCAA announced that it would hold March Madness, the men's and women's basketball tournaments, as scheduled, but without fans in attendance. And Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson in Australia tested positive for the coronavirus. Good thing they were in Australia, as at least over there they were able to get tested. And an aide in Maria Cantwell's office, the senator from Washington State, has tested positive for the virus as well. On Thursday morning, the Associated Press reported that Congress will shut the U.S. Capitol and House and Senate office buildings to the public until April 1st in reaction to the coronavirus. Now, late Wednesday night, House Democrats introduced a multi-billion-dollar bill in response to the coronavirus outbreak with emergency provisions that include paid sick leave, widespread free testing, food aid, and unemployment insurance. Oh, Mitch McConnell, ball's in your court. In other news, Senator Bernie Sanders on Wednesday acknowledged that he was, quote, losing the debate over electability to his rival for the Democratic presidential nomination, former Vice President Joe Biden, after Biden's latest primary victories the day before. Sanders said, however, that it was important for him to continue his campaign because, quote, a strong majority of the American people support our progressive agenda. He said he would participate in Sunday night's scheduled debate with Biden. Sanders, who's called for a Medicare for all, challenged Joe Biden to spell out how he'd address pressing problems, including access to health care, income inequality, and climate change, spelling out the questions he would like to ask Joe Biden in Sunday night's debate. Stay tuned. And the 2020 census is officially underway. It's expected to be the country's largest ever official population count. Households, beginning Thursday, will start getting invitations to complete the census online, over the phone, or through a mail-in questionnaire. Now, despite all the controversy and debate, there will not be a citizenship question on the census forms. And yes, you are required by law to respond, or you could get fined, and yes, you should participate. Funding for important programs affecting your community is dependent upon the outcome of the census, as is representation and the drawing of district lines. It is so important that you participate. I'm begging you to make sure that you do, and that you compel your friends and neighbors and community to do so as well. And finally, disgraced Hollywood producer and convicted rapist Harvey Weinstein has been sentenced to 23 years in prison for convictions of first-degree criminal sexual acts and third-degree rape. Weinstein's crimes and more allegations against him help fuel the global Me Too movement. Weinstein also faces felony charges of rape and sexual battery in Los Angeles, and the district attorney's office there has begun the process of extraditing him to California to face those charges. And finally, after another record-breaking Wednesday of Wall Street losses, the Dow opened Thursday morning down 1,600 points. Strap in for another roller coaster ride of a day. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. While you're there, please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 29 degrees Fahrenheit and very, very foggy. The temperature has actually gone down in the last couple of hours. Fancy that. Though we are expecting to have a high in the mid-60s, overnight lows will be in the low 30s. Abundant sunshine through the day. Winds will be light and variable and remain so overnight with clear skies until tomorrow, when we'll be sunny early and then becoming mostly cloudy, bringing with it quite a bit of rain and maybe snow overnight. And all through the weekend, rain with maybe some snow overnight. The pollen is still rated at none. The air quality index is in the good range at 26 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate for a springtime level of 4. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.23 inches. Visibility is down to 3 miles, if I think it's less than that where I'm at. And relative humidity is at 86%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 50 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 56 and partly cloudy. Rome, 63 and fair. Kyiv, 56 and fair. Kabul, 42 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong, 67 degrees and mostly cloudy. Tokyo, 52 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia, 64 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 47 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 48 degrees Fahrenheit and just cloudy with a lot of clouds. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Brazil's Congress overturned a presidential veto in an ongoing battle over appropriations, with President Jair Bolsonaro doubling social assistance for elderly and disabled people that will cost just a measly $4.2 billion this year. Well, you know, they got a lot of rainforests that they're cutting down now, aren't they? The defeat added to the fiscal woes of a government that is trying to rein in spending to meet budget targets and has very little room for discretionary spending to boost a slow economy. Well, that's what happens when fascists start running the government thinking they're businessmen when they're not. The so-called BPC programs grants the elderly over 65 years of age and disabled people who cannot take care of themselves a minimum monthly wage of about $217 each month. In a year of local elections, lawmakers are worried about voter rejection over austerity measures and overturned Bolsonaro's veto by 303 votes against 137.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Ever more anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Dateline, The Hague. The UN court for the former Yugoslavia said the appeals hearing of former Bosnian Serb military leader and convicted war criminal Ratko Mladic had been delayed on health grounds. Mladic, who was sentenced in 2017 to life in prison on charges of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity for his key role in the 1990s war in Bosnia, is said to have surgery to remove a benign polyp from his colon, court documents said. The appeal is to be rescheduled some 6 weeks after the surgery, but no precise date was given. Well, he's still in jail, and in jail he will remain. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on for all the coronavirus news, and there's a debate coming up, too. Let's not forget about that. So we will meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, and don't we deserve it? Well, in a virtual world, you could say that and get away with it now, couldn't you? So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.